literally it's it begins with we read the go as the verb, but it's not. Go is not the main verb. Go is a participle, and it comes from it's this word here. Porueltentes. And so, but this is a participle. So the key in this is what is the verb in Matthew. This is in Matthew 28:19. Yeah? This is a participle, which we translate as go. And so for many of us, that's the key verb, but that's not the key verb. Because the key verb is the word to make disciples, and it's this word here. This word, mathetusate, which is the second person plural aorist of mathetio, right? Which means to make disciples, or to disciple. It's not even to make disciples. Even in our translation, we translate it in error because it's not literally to make disciples. Because if we translate to make disciples, then we make to make the main verb, and disciples becomes the object, right? Because this is you all, this is plural. So you all are supposed to make disciples, is how we translate it. But this verb here doesn't mean to make disciples, it means to disciple.
Yeah.
To disciple. And because what is the object? You is the subject, this is the verb, what is the object?
Disciple nations.
The nations. And it's ta ethne. And it's panta. It's all the nations. So you all disciple all the nations. So when Jesus gives the great commission, this is, if you have to sum up the Great Commission, this is the Great Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Disciple all the nations. He's saying you all to his disciples, disciple the nations. Oh, shoot, I made this wrong.
It's different nations as what we would define nations today, though, right? You know what I mean? You know, like...
Well, you know, I just looked it up this morning. Again, I was looking at it. I want to look up ethne. And, you know, like, what you have to do is you have to look, how does Matthew use ethne, right? So, I was looking up this morning, Matthew, and how does he use it closest? Matthew 25, verse 32, it says that in the great white throne, in the great judgment, that all the nations shall be gathered before him. He's talking about nations, you know, for judgment. And then in verse 24, in chapter 24, verse 7, 9, and 14, he says, for nation shall rise against nation. So the way that Matthew is using the word ethne is speaking about nations.
Not just peoples, you know, people
Yeah,
groups.
I thought
right?
we referred to ethnic groups.
Right.
You know, which in that day there was almost the same thing, right? Ethnic groups and nations were almost the same thing. So in their minds, at least how Matthew is understanding this, it's nations.
Yeah.
That Jesus is saying, go disciple nations. But we read it as, go make disciples of all nations. And there's a huge difference between the two. Now in the Mark passage, he says, go to preach to every creature. So it's not the exclusion of the individual to the nation or the nation to the individual. Because we tend to dichotomize the two and say, well, it's either nations or individuals. But in the Mark commissioning, he is saying, preach to every creature. So it's the each one too. So we cannot get around, it's both. Yeah, individuals and nations. And that's why, you know, in the first paradigm is that we are called to disciple not just individuals but nations. Yeah. But this is this to me is the key. And when I saw this, I said, okay, we're headed the right path. There is an anointing here, and that's why I think there's such an anointing on Harvest Evangelism in changing nations, because this goes right along to Jesus' Great Commission. You know, but you got to be convinced of it. I went back, I looked at this, and I said, wait a minute, this is Jesus' Great Commission. You know, and once I became convinced, I said, okay, this is, and so why do we plant churches? It's to disciple nations. We have to plant churches. That we got to go plant churches. But what's it unto? Unto is the discipling of nations. Yeah. You know, we have to do all, you know, prayer evangelism and all these things, but it's unto discipling nations.